Moments ago, breaking reports circulated that an Expedition X crew member was rushed to the hospital following a horrifying incident during an episode that was never allowed to air. According to internal sources, filming was underway at a remote research location when something unseen triggered a severe medical emergency, forcing production to halt instantly. Josh Gates and the team reportedly watched it unfold in real time, but no footage was ever broadcast. Tonight, we're uncovering what really happened during the Uncut expedition that nearly ended the show for good. Subscribe so you don't miss anything. Production records show the episode was set to investigate a location kept confidential even within expedition planning notes, referred to only as Zone 9. This place had been originally rejected by network standard protocols due to past incidents involving severe equipment loss and unexplained sensor shutdowns. But on this particular trip, producers believed they had new protective monitoring systems in place, and everything seemed safe. Josh Gates approved the segment after receiving clearance from an outside consultant, someone reportedly experienced in crisis management for high-risk field operation. That consultant later refused to comment when contacted. The mission objective was simple: detect environmental anomalies during a nocturnal atmospheric shift. Jessica Chobot and Phil Torres were scheduled to begin initial setup, while the rest of the team handled power routing to location beacons. The raw script described this as a standard recon before thermal mapping, but from the very moment the team arrived, nothing felt standard. According to the audio notes recovered from a secondary recorder, Jessica can be heard whispering that the air felt heavier than normal, comparing it to walking into a room right after someone had been screaming. At exactly 22:14 local time, long before filming officially began, two drone feeds suffered what appeared to be forced directional failure. Neither crashed, but both turned 180 degrees toward the tree line on their own. Crew attempted a manual override and received the same invalid input error twice. Production assumed it was a signal bounce and pushed forward, unaware a pressure drop had already begun across the site. The ground temperature fell in 6-degree steps at precisely 2-minute interval, as if following something artificial rather than natural. Despite this, Phil motivated the team onward, telling them sudden environmental changes often meant they were close to something big. Those words are now chilling in hindsight, because within the next 40 minutes, the team would realize this was not the start of a discovery. This was the start of something trying to discover them. What makes this incident stand out compared to other Expedition X investigations isn't just what happened, it's how quickly the situation derailed, while still appearing completely calm to the naked eye. At 22:37, Jessica and Phil conducted a basic area sweep with thermal imaging. According to the pre-release field notes, heat signatures were normal, no animals nearby, no heat leaks from underground, and no visible structures other than the mobile base tent. Yet, the audio capture shows Jessica pausing mid-sentence and asking, "Are you hearing that? Because I don't know what I'm hearing." The sound logs reveal nothing abnormal. Her microphone didn't pick anything up. Seconds later, a motion alert triggered on camera 3 near the tree line, positioned roughly 20 yards from the monitoring tent. The recorded visual showed branches bending as if something large passed through. But the thermal overlay indicated no biological heat source, meaning whatever disturbed the vegetation had no identifiable body temperature. Phil initially wrote it off as air pressure change, citing that wind speeds had climbed. But that explanation quickly fell apart when a simultaneous sensor spike registered on the opposite side of the clearing, far from any wind exposure. Then the team noticed something no one could immediately explain. The live biometrics feed from one crew member showed an abrupt heart rate acceleration, jumping from 72 to 121 in under 3 seconds, despite him standing still and showing no outward signs of panic. He later claimed he felt like someone was standing directly behind him, breathing. In post-analysis, that same biometric feed displayed duplicate timestamps, identical minute and second entries with different heart rate values, an impossible data anomaly. suggesting the equipment was either malfunctioning or that environmental interference affected time tracking. The crew laughed it off at the moment, unaware that this was the first clear sign the expedition would not just fail, it would leave someone seriously injured before sunrise. The turning point came at 23:04, not with something seen or heard, but with something felt. The monitoring tent suddenly experienced a pressure shift strong enough to visibly flex the fabric walls inward. Recorded on the exterior cameras, but notably not detected on any barometric sensor, Phil, frustrated and convinced it was structural instability, radioed the rest of the team to regroup and begin recalibrating their instruments. That's when the EM tracker began pulsing erratically, cycling between peak readings and total power loss every 4 seconds. The fluctuation was so extreme that wires began vibrating across the floor, as if responding to a rhythmic force. Crew member Daniel, responsible for stabilization checks, knelt to disconnect the power feed. Witnesses stated he recoiled instantly, gasping that the cable was burning cold. Forensics later confirmed the temperature reading was -12 degrees Fahrenheit, even though the rest of the tent remained at 61 degrees. Seconds after that contact, Camera 3, the same unit that had previously predicted motion without heat, completely detached from its fixed mount and dropped to the ground. The metal ring holding it in place snapped clean, not bent or stripped. A playback review later showed that just before the fall, a frame appeared where the camera's lens reflection caught a shape, tall and narrow, with no clearly defined movement. One technician, during review, muted the audio halfway through the recording, claiming he could faintly hear something breathing inside the feed. Then came the crew member collapse. Daniel, who had handled the frozen cable, staggered back, clutched his chest, and dropped to one knee. His heart rate surged past 160. The transmission log noted his last coherent statement before blacking out. "It's like it knows I'm here." For the first time in Expedition X history, the crew called for an emergency extraction signal, something reserved for catastrophic site failure. They thought that would be the end of it, but it was only the beginning. The emergency extraction alert activated at 23:09, triggering a protocol usually reserved for physical injury or environmental hazard. A secondary crew positioned half a mile west moved in for recovery. By then, Daniel's vitals were crashing. He was pale, cold to the touch, and murmuring incoherently. His oxygen saturation dropped to 68%. Critical failure level. Phil ordered all equipment abandoned except the primary data drives and instructed everyone to regroup at Vehicle Point Delta. But the path to the extraction zone was not clear. As they moved across uneven forest terrain, the air began to carry a faint metallic hum, the same fluctuating EM pattern recorded earlier, but now audible without instruments. Crew member Mireya reported a sensation of static running along her spine, followed by tingling in her fingertips. Phil began calling out distances over radio, trying to maintain formation, but half of his words cut off mid-transmission, replaced by a crackling tone that sounded disturbingly rhythmic, almost like slow inhaling. Then the radio battery packs began to fail, one by one, even though they were at full charge when the team departed. Tablet screens glitched, GPS repositioning them in places they were not physically located. It was as if their equipment believed they were still standing near the hotspot. Panic crept in. The forest around them remained physically unchanged, yet the path seemed to subtly misalign every time they looked back. At one point, the camera operator swore the trees had shifted position, like the landscape itself was trying to gently push them back toward the original site. Footsteps began to appear in the damp soil beside their route, fresh prints, 11 inches long, human-like but narrow, emerging parallel to theirs without anyone present. They were too deep to belong to any crew member. One technician attempted to snap a photo, but the image capture froze at 99% compression and then erased itself. Phil halted the group just 30 yards from Vehicle Point Delta as a sudden realization overtook them. They were no longer walking alone. Something unseen had aligned itself behind them, pacing their movements with impossible precision. And Daniel, still barely conscious, whispered one final phrase before collapsing into complete unresponsiveness. "It followed us." By 2326, the crew finally reached Vehicle Point Delta, two rugged expedition trucks reinforced specifically for emergency retreats. Daniel was placed carefully across the back seat, while EMT protocol crew began a stabilized transport setup. He remained unresponsive, clinging to life with labored breaths and uncontrolled tremors. Everyone expected that once inside the protective shielding of the vehicles, the phenomenon would cease. Instead, for the first time that night, they realized the problem had changed shape. The moment the trucks powered on, a pulsing distortion appeared across the center screen of the vehicle's dash monitor. It wasn't part of their surveillance system. It was an internal system glitch. The distortion flickered into what looked like fragments of earlier camera footage. Frames from their abandoned camp appeared, overlaid with topographic grid lines that did not match any terrain they had crossed. It wasn't recorded. It was being generated in real time. Mireya quickly disconnected the external drives, fearing live contamination, but the pulse continued through vehicle software. Even the secondary ignition computer stalled for 3 seconds, displaying a single corrupted file name, docrep-v2 retry. The file didn't exist in storage logs. It was coming from memory systems that never touched field hardware. One by one, their digital panels began relaying unprompted data, audio clips of their own voices captured during previous expeditions, yet subtly wrong. In one clip, Phil's voice asked if the subject was stable, a phrase he never spoke. In another, Daniel's voice whispered, "It already knows what we think." He had never said that out loud. Further disturbance came when emergency telemetry in Truck 2 began rapidly replaying crew biometrics with latency, as if reading signals from several minutes in the future. Daniel's vitals displayed a pulse rate sharply decreasing before EMT sensors detected it. This preemptive reading proved horrifyingly accurate 7 minutes later. Phil made the call. No more electronics. The trucks went into manual override. All data drives were isolated inside Faraday bags. But as they sped toward base camp, quieter but no less alarming anomalies continued. The radio chirped spontaneously, not with static, but with breathing, slow, deliberate, patterned. Only then did Mireya mutter what no one wanted to admit. "It's not stuck in the hot spot. It's traveling with us." Daniel arrived at St. Francis Regional at 1:14 under priority intake. Listed as a neurological trauma patient, the ER team expected hypothermia or exposure to environmental toxins. What they encountered instead forced them to initiate a report deemed abnormal sensory distress, cause undetermined. The first red flag appeared during preliminary vitals. Daniel's pulse, previously irregular, stabilized to a calm rhythm, only to spike erratically whenever someone came within 3 feet of his bed. Nearly every nurse and technician experienced momentary disorientation when approaching. One reported a ringing pressure in the head, like being underwater. A respiratory specialist briefly forgot which hand held the oxygen mask. Medical imaging escalated confusion. The CT scan showed no brain trauma, no signs of viral or parasitic invasion, yet the system flagged an anomaly in the temporal lobe, pixels that registered motion despite the image being static. Technicians recalibrated the machine 3 times. The anomaly remained. Neurologist Dr. Ramirez noted the reading resembled not internal damage, but interference, like something external was trying to interact at the point of cognitive recognition. His statement was never officially added to the report. At 1:47, while preparing for MRI evaluation, Daniel regained partial awareness. He did not open his eyes, but his voice emerged abruptly, fragmented. "Not in here. Walls. Listening." The words sounded strained, almost defensive. A nurse asked what he meant, but Daniel suddenly convulsed. For roughly 8 seconds, the heart monitor displayed no numerical readout, only static lines, while every overhead light dimmed simultaneously throughout the trauma wing. No emergency generator activated, and yet power returned, without any electrical record marking an interruption. Security footage from the hallway outside Daniel's room captured captured staff reacting to the dimming lights. But inside the room, the camera feed cut out for exactly 81 frames. When playback realigned, Daniel's bed had shifted 3 inches toward the wall. His limbs remained positioned as before, with no detectable movement in between. That was when hospital staff asked Expedition X members if they had encountered electromagnetic exposure. Phil hesitated before answering. "No," he said. "It wasn't the environment. It was following him." Once Daniel was stabilized under observation, producers instructed the Expedition X team to pull all field files from the last 48 hours for internal review. The mandate was quiet and urgent. No calls, no email trails. Jessica and Phil locked themselves in the on-site production vault to begin examining the raw data, with Josh Gates phoning in from a separate location. The objective was simple: isolate anything that suggested liability or negligence. But as they initiated footage transfer onto a secure system with no external network access, the first indication something had gone wrong appeared. Despite the drive being formatted 20 minutes earlier, a time-stamped folder labeled Repeat 0719 was already present. Phil swore he hadn't copied anything yet. Inside the folder were fragments of recorded audio and short video loops, some no longer than 5 seconds, showing the exact moment Daniel first stepped into the ravine. In the clips, the environment appeared normal, except for faint distortions at the edges of the screen, like the atmosphere was compressing inward. Each loop ended with the same distorted whisper overlaying the background static. "Do not come back alone." They deleted the folder. Within seconds, it reappeared. Jessica wiped the drive entirely, disconnected power, and rebooted the workstation. Not only did the folder remain, it had multiplied, now displayed in alphabetical sequence, each titled Repeat, followed by different time markers not associated with the expedition. Some timestamps didn't align with any recorded material. Others referenced future times, dates, and hours yet to occur. They ran diagnostics. No malware, no file corruption. The files existed without logical creation sources. When they played one of the future timestamp clips, the video displayed their production room at night, filmed from inside. A chair sat in the corner, empty. In the reflection of the cabinet glass, however, a blurred humanoid figure stood behind the chair, unmoving. The date stamp indicated 2 nights from now. Josh, still on the line, went silent for 6 seconds before saying, "Pull the tapes, lock the vault. Don't watch anything else until someone higher up decides what we do." That instruction came too late, because the next time Jessica touched the monitor, the screen flickered and showed a frame she did not remember recording. Daniel's hospital room. The same whisper. It followed him. By the following morning, the atmosphere on site had completely shifted. Jessica arrived at base camp visibly shaken, clutching a printed copy of one of the future time-stamped scenes. According to field logs, she didn't sleep. Phil had already contacted internal safety advisors, filing a detailed incident report that described Daniel's collapse as neurological trauma, possibly induced by environmental interference. The team pushed to suspend all filming immediately and return equipment to headquarters for full technical analysis. They argued that if the anomaly somehow affected physiological harm, the crew could be in imminent danger. That request lasted less than 15 minutes. The network's executive liaison joined the call and dismissed the stop work proposal. According to Jessica's later interview, the exec stated directly that the footage could represent the highest engagement point in the show's history, and hinted that they were already drafting a teaser for upcoming episodes. The fact that the physical injury occurred mid-expedition only made the episode more compelling. Phil immediately objected, reminding them that Daniel was under medical care and might face lasting cognitive damage. The response? "You're being emotional. This is the risk of immersive investigation. Audiences understand that." The team was furious. Josh Gates, patched into the call from Los Angeles, reportedly went silent for several moments before firmly repeating the request to halt the expedition entirely. The network escalated instead, citing contractual obligations and insurance coverage, and instructed them to complete the last 3 field segments before or withdrawal. They even assigned a remote marketing representative to begin condensing the hospital incident into potential promotional cuts, ignoring objections from medical staff. Jessica later admitted the most chilling part wasn't the exec's decision. It was the slight audio glitch that occurred right after the call ended. The power flickered inside the production tent. Every camera indicator light turned red for 3 seconds, as if they all started recording simultaneously, unprompted. When techs tried to review that moment later, no cameras registered having captured anything at all. That's when Phil quietly said, "It knows we're still here." And nobody disagreed. Daniel remained unresponsive for nearly 12 hours after being airlifted to a temporary treatment facility outside the forest zone. Medical tests failed to show signs of concussion, infection, or seizure. His vitals were stable, yet he wouldn't wake. It wasn't until late afternoon, just as the team packed gear to leave, that he suddenly opened his eyes. He didn't seem confused or disoriented, but disturbingly calm. According to Jessica, the room temperature dropped the moment he looked at her. He didn't recognize anyone else in the tent, not even the paramedics. He whispered something so faint she had to lean close to hear it. "It watched me fall, then waited to see who would come help." His voice sounded normal, but the words didn't. Jessica stepped back instinctively. Phil asked him what he meant, but Daniel only continued, "It's figuring out who's the next one." Then he stared past them. Not at a wall, not at ceiling, but at an empty corner of the tent where nothing stood. He began smiling, small at first, then unnaturally wide, as if trying to imitate the expression rather than showing real emotion. Moments later, alarms sounded throughout the medical tent. Every monitor attached to him displayed rapid spikes, not dangerous, but synchronized, as if responding to an external pattern rather than his physical state. The lights flickered once, twice, then power cut entirely for exactly 11 seconds. When it came back, Daniel had closed his eyes. He wasn't unconscious. He was sleeping peacefully, as if nothing happened. Within the hour, production leadership ordered a site-wide withdrawal. Not a pause, not a health and safety hold, an immediate evacuation. All footage related to the event was flagged maximum level containment, never to air. Internal reports concluded that unidentified environmental influence was responsible. The final note added by the network compliance officer was only 3 words long: footage not usable. But those who were there still insist it wasn't because the footage was corrupted. It was because it was too clear.